I've put about 40 hours into Pokemon Pokopia over the past 2 weeks. Easily one of the best games Nintendo's put out. Like, the best Pokemon spin-off in years. I've been saying this since I saw the trailer, okay? This thing is a masterpiece. And by the way, is way better than Animal Crossing New Horizons. This thing is a masterpiece and something that I think I'll be going back to for a long time. This is probably something that's probably going to take, like, a couple of 100 hours to do everything in. It's one of those games. And even then, you're still going to want to, like, trick out your town and, like, optimize it and, like, get all your Pokemon in, like, the coolest houses possible. Like, it's going to be sick. Like, again, you're already seeing a lot of people, like, come up with, like, pretty elaborate set pieces and, like, towns. It really is up to you. And for me, personally, what I find interesting about this is just how many people are in denial about how successful Pokopia actually is. Because it's obviously a huge hit. It's obviously going to be an evergreen title for Switch 2. It's obviously going to go on to be the best-selling console game on the console. It's going to go on to be a classic. And yet, right now, we're still in that era where, like, everyone's kind of just, like, waiting for, like, people to start complaining. And that's not going to happen. Okay, like, if the bulk of your complaining is coming from people who don't play Pokemon and hate Pokemon, like, oh no, another Pokemon game, it's not going to go anywhere. Like, Pokopia is a huge success, it's selling Switch 2s, and there's not really anything anyone can do to stop that. I think the success of Pokopia is going to lead into Pokemon's, like, third Pokemania phase. Because let's be real. Like, there's been a couple of, like, Pokemania phases since the initial Gen 1 one, right? We had, like, you know, the Gen 4 remakes. We had the Pokemon Go thing. And then we had Pokopia. You know, the simple fact of the matter is Pokemon's such a culturally relevant, iconic brand that it's had multiple periods where it explodes in popularity in the fad period and then kind of, like, stagnates for a bit, you know, becoming extremely successful for a long time, still making money, and then, like, exploding again, you know? It's very interesting to see how people write off Pokemon, or Nintendo in general, because this is how it always goes, is that they have this, like, huge burst of relevancy, this huge success, whether it's, like, the Wii or Animal Crossing New Horizons, and then immediately after the success, like, oh, they weren't able to maintain it. Like, they put out their biggest thing ever, and they weren't able to top it within the next 6 months. Like, yeah. Like, Pokemon went on to be the biggest brand ever, okay? Like, they weren't gonna top that brand, especially when they were still supporting that brand. And this is the huge, like, myopic, just kind of, like, delusional copes that we see from this community. You know, so many of them come out and try and tell you nobody cares about Pokemon, it's for kids, like, it's immature, it's for children, and, like, more and more people are, like, getting into the hobby, getting into the TCG, getting into the anime, getting into the video games. Like, we're getting to the point where, like, clowning on Pokemon is becoming a kind of a meme, honestly. Because, you know, I've been saying this for a long time, is that Pokemon, I think, has done a way better job of creating brand synergy than something like Lord of the Rings or Harry Potter or, like, you know, DC, Marvel, you know, any of the major brands that people say are the best in the Western world. Because, like, you know, those brands just kind of expect you to show up because of the brand name and not really, like, innovating or doing anything fresh, new, and exciting. Pokemon's never been like that. You know, Pokemon always innovates. They always introduce new Pokemon. They always introduce, like, new regions, more formats, more things to experience, right? Like, Pokemon is just phenomenal at what it does, right? It is the best there is at what it does, essentially. And like, for some reason, there's just this delusional mindset, especially among older people, that Pokemon is, like, one of the worst things to happen to society. And I suppose it's just, like, a holdover from, like, boomers in the 90s, you know, how angry they were that Pokemon was way more popular with kids than, like, something like Superman or, like, Peanuts or whatever. Like, they never really stopped to consider, like, why Pokemon was more popular. You know, they never understood, like, the versatility of the world, you know, how flexible the characters were, how you can put them in all kinds of situations. Like, they didn't understand, like, the setting and what makes it appealing. And I think the worst thing about it is that they didn't even try to understand. You know, they just kind of wrote it off as this passing fad. And they keep getting surprised whenever Pokemon makes a resurgence in popularity. You know, like, this is, I think, probably going to be the moment where the Switch era Pokemon hate train just comes to a screeching halt, okay? Like, it is not going to survive after this. And I've seen people like on the Arc TV release statements saying that, like, well, the only reason this game is as good as it is because Game Freak doesn't work on it. And I'm just like, they co-developed it with Koei Tecmo. They're in the credits. Do you think Game Freak isn't involved with these projects? Like, do you? Like, this is just, it's just such a delusional cope. Like, oh yeah, Koei Tecmo made a Pokemon game. Oh yeah, I'm sure the Pokemon company is going to have a problem with that. Like, I just don't. Oh yeah, they co-developed the game anymore together, and that means that like Game Freak's gonna get jealous. Like, it doesn't happen. Like, that's not going to happen. It is downright ridiculous how we're seeing people bend over backwards, trying to downplay this release, trying to make fun of it, trying to ignore it, trying to say this wasn't a big deal or a cultural phenomenon. It is. And not only is Pokopia a huge success, this is also going to lead into Pokemon growing and evolving as a brand going forward. You know, because I would be very surprised if this doesn't turn out to be like one of the all-time fan favorite like Pokemon spin-off games. You know, this isn't my personal Pokemon favorite Pokemon spin-off. Like, I think I do prefer stuff like Stadium and things that are more like mainline with like the combat and stuff like that. But like I don't think there's any denying that for a lot of people, this is Pokemon. Like, this is going to be like how Pokemon is viewed for a lot of people who like these kind of games. Like, this is like going to be like a formative game for a lot of people. And I think there's just this very clear denial what this means from the community. That like the idea that like Pokemon can just whip out something like this out of nowhere and have it be such a huge hit, that should be a very strong indication of just how strong of a brand Pokemon is, how strong of a position Nintendo is, and seeing just how desperate and delusional the Pokemon haters are. Like, you can't say this isn't a mainline game because it doesn't matter because the mainline game is coming out next year. You can't say that like, well, I want battles because Pokemon Champions is coming out next month. Like, well, like, you can't say like, well, I wanted human characters because, you know, we got that with Pokemon Legends EA. You know, you can't say that like, well, I like the older games because they re-released the older games. Like, there's nothing you can possibly do to downplay Nintendo, the Pokemon Company, or the Switch 2, like, at this point. And now they're just grasping at straws. It's just like, it's just downright pathetic how desperate they are to push their narrative. And it's something that we absolutely should be eager to push back against. Like, this mindset is completely delusional.